Hey guys, if you are listening to this or if you are watching the YouTube version, we are going to be doing things very different this week. So, I recorded this episode in its entirety, and once I played it back, I realized that there was no sound. I have been feeling under the weather today. I've been in bed. I've been sleeping on and off. I have a pounding headache. And so it took a lot for me to get up and record this episode. And for it to go no audio, I just really don't have it in me to do it again. So I didn't want to not give you anything at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to summarize what we talked about so that you can still have something to take away from it. So, the topic of what we are talking about is taking a risk. I basically explained to you in this episode that so many people in life have, goals of being successful. They have goals of being successful in life. They have goals of being successful in their business. But when you actually observe a lot of people, many people actually don't achieve those goals. And when you look at why, it's not because they're not capable, it's not because they're not good enough, but it's simply because they are too afraid to take a risk and try. I even gave you a story from my personal life where I told you that I went through a season of having like 5 figures to having $4 in my bank account. And that season literally traumatized me. So after I experienced that season, I prayed so hard for security. I was looking at it like a business. Yes, I want the results that comes from business, but it's just too risky. It's like, you can do all this work in your business and not make any money at all. And I felt like with the job, at least I know that if I'm putting in this work and if I'm putting in this effort, there's going to be a paycheck coming at the end of the week or, in 2 weeks. And I can have benefits to like health insurance and all that. And I remember that was my mindset for a long time after the situation of me losing everything I had. And then one day I came across this video of a wealthy person and they said something that stuck with me. They said the difference between successful people and non-successful people is that non-successful people want security and successful people are willing to take a risk. And that changed my life. It changed the way that I viewed things. And I want to help you do the same so that you can become successful. But in order to do that, you first have to understand how to take smart risk, because not every risk that comes your way is going to be a risk that you should take. So I gave you 2 ways to know if a risk is smart. And the first way is knowing that the risk is intentionally planned out and it's not something that you are guessing on. So I gave you an example to make it a little bit more real. I told you that one thing that I have been doing is I have been learning how to day trade. And at first, I learned the basics of day trading. I learned what it is, how it works, the basics of a chart, how to, use the platforms that you need to use to day trade. And then I started practicing. And when I was practicing, I realized that I really didn't understand my strategy. I wasn't winning a lot. I wasn't profitable. And so I was very unknowledgeable when it came to day trading. So it would have been very unwise for me to know that I'm in this position where I don't know enough to get started and know that this risk will actually pay off, but I'm going to put my money into it and I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to do it anyway. That's not smart. That is ignorance. And so I basically said, you want to make sure that you are aware and you know enough about what you are about to risk to make sure that when you take it, it is more likely to succeed. I told you that there is no risk that will be 100% positive to succeed because anything can happen and obstacles can come. But you want to make sure that the risk that you are taking is at least 70% likely to succeed. And you don't want to be in a position where it's like, okay, if I were to ask myself, how certain am I that when I take this, I'm going to see a result? And your answer is like, well, I'm 20% certain or I'm 40% certain, We don't want to take risk out of ignorance. We want to make sure that we at least understand enough to know that there's a higher chance of it happening. I even talked to you about a lot of reasons why people are afraid to take risk. And I said, some people are just simply afraid. And then some people just feel like they are insecure or they don't know enough. And I was telling you that 9 times out of 10, a lot of people in that type of situation is correct. They do not know enough, but that's not an excuse to sit on the sidelines and just keep procrastinating and watching time go by and not doing anything at all. If you feel like you don't know enough, that is the time for you to start learning more so that you can be well prepared to take this risk. I even use myself as an example with trading because, like I just said, when I first started learning, I understood the basics. And when I started practicing, I realized like, oh girl, you don't know enough to get started. You don't know enough to just jump in with your own money and start doing this. But I did not say, okay, screw trading, or I'm just going to do it one day in the future. I actually invested in myself, and I invested in something that's helping me with the strategy so that I'm gaining a better strategy and I have a more higher probability of becoming profitable in trading. So now that I'm, still practicing, I feel a lot more confident jumping in with my real money and taking that risk. And then the second way that we talked about with taking smart risks is understanding your risk to reward. So I told you to ask yourself, if you were to take this risk, what will you gain from it? And the reason why I want you to ask yourself this question is because you're going to get a lot of opportunities that are risky in life. And just because you get a lot does not mean that you should act on a lot. You have to ask yourself, based on the risk that I'm taking, what is the reward that I'm getting in return? And do I feel like the reward is worth it? Now, the answer to this question is going to be different for everyone because, let's say that you have to take a risk of taking out a loan for $100,000 to start a business, and you have 2 people who are offered this risk. Now, person number 1, they have 6 figures worth of student loan debts. They have a car payment, they have a mortgage, and they have thousands of dollars of credit card debt. And they feel like in their heart, taking out a loan for $100,000 is just not smart because they're already struggling to pay off everything that they already have. Then you have person number 2. They are very successful. They barely have debt. They've spent years paying off their debt. So, taking out a loan is nothing. Person number 2 may look at this risk and look at the reward and feel like, oh, that's nothing. That's definitely worth it. But then person number 1 may look at it and feel like, oh, that's too risky. Like, it's not worth it. And then I don't even know if the business is going to be successful. I don't know how much money we're going to make in return from the business. Like, it's just not worth it to me. It's basically going to fluctuate person by person. There's no one size fit all answer. It's based on your personal situation. It's also based on your morals because you have to ask yourself, is this risk going to be detrimental to you? Is it going to go against your morals? Will you have to lie? Will you have to be manipulative? Will you have to sacrifice things like your family? Will you have to sacrifice things like your marriage? Will you have to sacrifice your freedom and, possibly go to prison? Like, is it going to go against your morals? There's so many things that you have to take into consideration when you're trying to ask yourself, is the risk that you're taking worth the reward that you're going to get? You can even ask yourself like, okay, what if this risk turns sour? Because remember, there's no 100% chance that the risk will work out. There's always going to be a likelihood of it not working out. So what is the likelihood of it not working out? And is the risk worth taking this reward for that likelihood, especially if the likelihood is small? So let's say going back to the business example, if I take out this loan for $100,000, there's a 70% chance that this business will make $1 million in the first year. And then there is a 30% chance that this business might fail and we might go red. But then if that happens, we have some money stored up to file for bankruptcy. So there's only a 30% chance of the business going red, which is very small. And then I also have a solution of what I'm going to do if that happens. So in that situation, you might feel like that risk is worth the reward. So basically what I want you to do is I don't want you to make the mistake of looking at the risk independently and looking at the reward independently. I want you to put the risk to the reward together and look at it overall and ask yourself, do you feel like it's worth it? And so those are the 2 ways that you can take smart risks. Now, leaving you off, I'm going to leave you with a weekly action step. So sometime this week, I want you to think about one thing in either your personal life or in your business that you have been afraid to move on. Then I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what do I need to learn or prepare for so that this risk that I'm taking will be taken wisely instead of blindly? Number 2, what is the risk to reward ratio and do I feel like it's worth it? And number 3, what is one small action that I can take this week to move closer to that success? And so that is all that I have for you. I'm so sorry that we had to do the episode like this, but like I said, I don't feel good. I spent an hour recording and there's no audio whatsoever. I really did not feel like redoing it. I really didn't even feel like jumping on and doing the audio version because my head is pounding, but I just really did not want to leave you guys with nothing. We should be back on schedule next week with video content. And so let me know how this has helped you in the comments, and I will see you next week.